Hey, squirrel listeners! I read to y'all yesterday, but could not get it uploaded. I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and Granny may have said a couple of naughty words. I'm not proud of it, but that's how I was. I saw it recording. I read 33 minutes and 30 some seconds. And still didn't get the whole chapter in. So it's going to be in 2 parts today. And y'all, I pray it works. I'm so sorry. I should have put a message up on the community tab, but I kept thinking I could get it. But So we're going to claim that this is going to work today. Chapter 5 in Rilla of Ingleside is The Sound of a Going, G-O-I-N-G. Rilla ran down through the sunlit glory of the maple grove behind Ingleside to her favorite nook in Rainbow Valley. She sat down on a green moss stone among the fern, propped her chin on her hands, and stared unseeingly at the dazzling blue sky of the August afternoon, so blue, so peaceful, so unchanged, just as it had arched over the valley in the mellow days of late summer ever since she could remember. She wanted to be alone, to think things out, to adjust herself, if it were possible, to the new world into which she seemed to have been transplanted with a suddenness and completeness that left her half bewildered as to her own identity. Could she be the same Rilla Blythe who had danced at Four Winds Light 6 days ago, only 6 days ago? It seemed to Rilla that she had lived as much in those 6 days as in all her previous life, and if it be true that we should count time by heart throbs, she had. That evening, with its hopes and fears and triumphs and humiliations, seemed like ancient history now. Could she really ever have cried just because she'd been forgotten and had to walk home with Mary Vance? Ah, thought Rilla sadly, how trivial and absurd such a cause of tears now appeared to her. She could cry now with the right good will, but she would not. She must not. What was it Mother had said, looking with her white lips and stricken eyes as Rilla had never seen her mother look before? When our women fail in courage, shall our men be fearless still? Yes, that was it. She must be brave like Mother and Nan and Faith who had cried with flashing eyes, "Oh, if I were only a man to go too!" Only when her eyes ached and her throat burned like this, she had to hide herself in Rainbow Valley for a little, just to think things out and remember that she wasn't a child any longer. She was grown up, and women had to face things like this. But it was nice to get away alone now and then, where nobody could see her and where she needn't feel that people thought her a little coward if some tears came in spite of her. How sweet and woodsy the ferns smelled, how softly the great feathery boughs of the firs waved and murmured over her, how elfinly rang the bells of the tree lovers, just a tinkle now and then as the breeze swept by, how purple and elusive the haze where incense was being offered on many an altar of the hills, how the maple leaves whitened in the wind until the grove seemed covered with pale, silvery blossoms. Everything was just the same as she had seen it hundreds of times, and yet the whole face of the world seemed changed. How wicked I was to wish that something dramatic would happen, she thought. Oh, if we could only have those dear, monotonous, pleasant days back again, I would never grumble about them again. Rilla's world had crumbled to pieces the very day after the party. As they lingered around the dinner table at Ingleside talking of the war, the telephone had rung. It was a long-distance call from Charlottetown for Jim. When he had finished talking, he hung up the receiver and turned around with a flushed face and glowing eyes. Before he had said a word, his mother and Nan and Di turned pale. As for Rilla, for the first time in her life, she felt that everyone must hear her heart beating, and that something had clutched at her throat. "They're calling for volunteers in town, Father," said Jim. "Scores have joined up already. I'm going in tonight to enlist." "Oh, little Jim," cried Mrs. Blythe brokenly. She had not called him that for many years, not since the day he had rebelled against it. "Oh, no, no, little Jim." "I must, Mother. I'm right, am I not, Father?" said Jim. Dr. Blythe had risen. He was very pale, too, and his voice was husky, but he did not hesitate. "Yes, Jim? Yes, if you feel that way, yes." Mrs. Blythe covered her face. Walter stared moodily at his plate. Nan and Di clasped each other's hands. Shirley tried to look unconcerned. Susan sat as if paralyzed, her piece of pie half eaten on her plate. Susan never did finish that piece of pie, a fact which bore eloquent testimony to the upheaval in her inner women, for Susan considered it a cardinal sin to begin to eat anything and not finish it. That was willful waste, hens to the contrary notwithstanding. Jim turned to the phone again. "I must ring the manse. Jerry will want to go too." At this, Nan had cried out, "Oh!" as if a knife had been thrust into her, and rushed from the room. Di followed her. Rilla turned to Walter for comfort, but Walter was lost to her in some reverie she could not share. "All right," Jim was saying, as coolly as if he were arranging the details of a picnic. "I thought you would. Yes, tonight, the 7 o'clock. Meet me at the station. So long." "Mrs. Doctor, dear," said Susan, "I wish you would wake me up. Am I dreaming or am I awake? Does that blessed boy realize what he's saying? Does he mean that he's going to enlist as a soldier? You do not mean to tell me that they want children like him? It's an outrage. Surely you and the doctor will not permit it." "We can't stop it," said Mrs. Blythe, choking. "Oh, Gilbert." Dr. Blythe came up behind his wife and took her hand, gently looking down into the sweet gray eyes that he had only once before seen, filled with such imploring anguish as now. They both thought of that other time, the day, years ago, in the House of Dreams, when little Joyce had died. "Would you have him stay, Anne, when the others are going, when he thinks it's his duty? Would you have him so selfish and small-souled?" No, but oh, our firstborn son. He's only a lad, Gilbert. I'll try to be brave after a while, but just now I can't. It's all come so suddenly. Give me time." The doctor and his wife went out of the room. Jim had gone. Walter had gone. Shirley got up to go. Rilla and Susan remained staring at each other across the deserted table. Rilla had not yet cried. She was too stunned for tears. Then she saw that Susan was crying. Susan, whom she had never seen shed a tear before. "Oh, Susan, will he really go?" she asked. It's just ridiculous, that's what it is," said Susan. She wiped away her tears, gulped resolutely, and got up. "I'm going to wash the dishes. That has to be done, even if everybody has gone crazy. There now, dearie, don't cry. Jim will go, most likely, but the war will be over long before he gets anywhere near it. Let us take a brace and not worry your poor mother." In the Enterprise today it was reported that Lord Kitchener says the war will last 3 years, said Rilla dubiously. "I'm not acquainted with Lord Kitchener," said Susan composedly, "but I dare say he makes mistakes as often as other people. Your father says it will be over in a few months, and I have just as much faith in his opinions as I have in the Lord, anybody's. So, just let us be calm and trust in the Almighty and get this place tidied up. I'm done with crying, which is a waste of time and discourages everybody. Jim and Jerry went to Charlottetown that night, and 2 days later they came back in khaki. The Glen hummed with excitement over it. Life at Ingleside had suddenly become a tense, strained, thrilling thing. Mrs. Blythe and Nan were brave and smiling and wonderful. Already Mrs. Blythe and Miss Cornelia were organizing a Red Cross. The doctor and Mr. Meredith were rounding up men for the Patriotic Society. Rilla, after the first shock, get tongue-tied and forgot to bring my water in here. First shock, reacted to the romance of it all in spite of her heartache. Jim certainly looked magnificent in his uniform. It was splendid to think of the lads of Canada answering so speedily and fearlessly and uncalculatingly to the call of their country. Rilla carried her head high among the girls whose brothers had not so responded. In her diary she wrote, "He goes to do what I had done, had Douglas's daughter been his son," and was sure she meant it. If she were a boy, of course, she would go. She hadn't the least doubt of that. She wondered if it was very dreadful of her to feel glad that Walter hadn't got strong as soon as they had wished after the fever. "I couldn't bear to have Walter go," she wrote. "I love Jim ever so much, but Walter means more to me than anything in the world, and I would die if he had to go. He seems so changed these days. He doesn't go about with Jim and Jerry and all. I shall never forget Susan's face when Jim came home." Something happened to my screen. Now I got to find where I was. He doesn't go about, with Jim and Jerry at all. I shall never forget Susan's face when Jim came home in his khaki. It worked and twisted her face. It worked and twisted as if she were going to cry, but all she said was, "You look almost like a man in that, Jim." Jim laughed. He never minds because Susan thinks him just a child still. Everybody seems busy but me. I wish there was something I could do, but there doesn't seem to be anything. Mother and Nana and Di are busy all the time. All the time. And I just wander about like a lonely ghost. What hurts me terribly, though, is that Mother smiles and Nan's just seem put on from the outside. Mother's eyes never laugh now. It makes me feel that I shouldn't laugh either. That it's wicked to feel laughy. And it's so hard for me to be a soldier. And it's so hard for me to keep from laughing, even if Jim is going to be a soldier. But when I laugh, I don't enjoy it either as I used to do. There's something behind it all that keeps hurting me, especially when I wake up in the night. Then I cry because I'm afraid. That Kitchener of Khartoum is right, and the war will last for years and years, and Jim may be. But no, I won't write it. It would make me feel as if it were really going to happen. The other day, Nan said nothing can ever be quite the same for any of us again. It made me feel rebellious. Why shouldn't things be the same again? When everything is over and Jim and Jerry are back, we'll all be happy and jolly again, and these days will seem just like a bad dream. The coming of the mail is the most exciting event of every day now. Father just snatches the paper. I never saw Father snatch before, and the rest of us crowd round and look at the headlines over his shoulder. Susan vows she does not and will not believe a word the papers say, but but she always comes to the kitchen door and listens, and then goes back, shaking her head. She's terribly indignant all the time, but she cooks up all the things Jim likes, especially, and she did not make a single bit of fuss when she found Monday asleep on the spare room bed yesterday, right on top of Mrs. Rachel Lynde's apple leaf spread. The Almighty only knows where your master will be having to sleep before long, you poor dumb beast, she said as she put him quite gently out. But she never relents towards the doc. She says the minute he saw Jim in khaki, he turned into Mr. Hyde then and there. She thinks that ought to be proof enough of what he really is. Susan is funny, but she's an old dear. Shirley says she is one half angel and the other half a good cook. But then Shirley is the only one of us she never scolds. And I'm going to stop right there. My mouth is parched. Why I can't remember to bring my water bottle in here. And pray that I can upload this. You'll know if you're seeing it. All right, love you folks, and live at 5 today. Woo! Have my jingles on yet? They're right here. Okay, I gotta go pick up meds today and do one thing and another. Get back on this baby blanket and a capelet for Christy's mini CAL. Outlander inspired. Another Outlander inspired piece. I love those. Love y'all. Hope to see you at 5. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Bye-bye.